Welcome to Out of the Noise podcast, a spiritual growth podcast. This podcast is about holding sacred space to help assist humanity to raise their consciousness through connection by having courageous conversations out of the noise of mainstream with heart-centered leaders, wisdom keepers, and divine humans expanding into their authenticity and soul purpose. We will explore spiritual concepts, practices to deepen into your healing and the collective. Priestess Lilly is a medium, light activator, and heart-centered leader that is committed in raising the light frequency and consciousness here on Earth for us all. You can work with her and learn more by visiting www.priestesslily.com. Enjoy your spiritual learnings.
Welcome to this empowering episode of Out of the Noise with Lindsay, where we unleash your authentic self, where we dive deep into a transformational journey of living authentically in the world that is calling you to step fully into your truth. In this age of light, there is no space for anything less than authenticity. The old patterns of hiding, shrinking, or conforming are no longer serving us. The universe is asking, no, in fact, she's demanding that we rise to our true self unapologetically and with purpose. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Lindsay, an author, a speaker, an instructor, and a wellness advocate from Washington, D.C. area, America. Lindsay's mission is to empower individuals to live with intention and purpose. And her wisdom comes not only from her experts in transformational change and philosophy around well-being, but also from her own deeply personal lived experience of healing mind, body, and soul. Through her book and her work, Lindsay helps others break free from limiting patterns, embracing their truth, and stepping into their authentic self. In this episode, she shares her story, her struggles, her breakthroughs, and the insight she's gained along the way. So get ready to be inspired, to reflect, and active in your own journey towards living authentically. Let's dive in. I want to welcome today the beautiful Lindsay to our podcast, Out of the Noise. She's sitting in America right now, Washington, D.C. Welcome to Out of the Noise. How are you today? Good.
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. So what's the time over there now?
It is 3 p.m.
Just
on December 12th.
Yeah, so we're the 13th. So today is the day of the goddess, which I find fascinating that this is the day that we've set this time up for this podcast. I know our conversation is going to be led in so many different ways and really activate the listeners. And so I think that's going to be phenomenal. Tell me a little bit about yourself, gorgeous.
So I grew up in this area, and what led me to want to be on your podcast and just gaining exposure in general is the book that I just wrote called Vigilante. And in a nutshell, it's partially about my escape, if you will, from mainstream convention, from status quo. So I spent the better part of my life kind of in that system from a family standpoint, culturally, societally. And then just recently, I'd say like the past 10 years ago, started exploring different options spiritually, mindfully, bodily, soulfully. So that's the high level view about me and why I'm here today.
I love that, because I'm all about how can we exit the system and be our authentic aligned self. I don't think that necessarily the human being experience, we as human beings, as multi-dimensional beings, came to be part of a system. But I think that's basically, we're born into that system as soon as we're here. So we know no different. We actually know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's part of when you hit that, I don't want to say age bracket, but, part of our spiritual awakening is how does the system really impact our thoughts, feelings, and conditioning, you know, in a bigger context. So I love that this is so aligned with where so many people are journeying right now. Because they're starting to question life. And I don't think many people actually even realize they're part of a system.
No. And I personally had to be kind of brought down to my knees before I even thought to ask myself those questions or make any changes. So I don't know that I would have had the wherewithal unless things got as bad as they did and my world kind of became broken wide open in order for me to have that breakthrough. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, I totally agree. So for you, was there that pivotal point that was a spiritual awakening? I mean, or a spiritual activation?
Yeah, I don't know that it happened all at once. I think there were several moments that guided me there. It was more of the educational variety too, and taking upon myself to follow little subtle nudges and whispers in the right direction. But 10 years ago, me would not recognize my life today or even be able to fathom it. So it's been a pretty wild ride in a beautiful way.
Yeah, totally agree. Absolutely. You know, I don't think that we have a spiritual awakening. I think we're awakening consistently on our lifetime to who we really are and why we're here. When I think of myself, COVID was a massive activation point for me. You know, I was a caterer.
Oh, wow.
Laugh at it now. I can laugh at myself now about it. I was a caterer, had lots of staff and, you know, knew I was a medium, but totally hiding in the shadows. That literally, you know, seeing your business, something that you love, flatlined in a space of and knowing that it was going to be flatlined, knowing that you were going, that was this real pivotal moment of fear, of sorrow, of letting go, but also stepping into the unknown. And I think that's the thing that in order to, you know, I don't want to say find yourself because that sounds like, but you do find yourself. In order for you to find your authentic self, you know, part of that is stepping into the unknown.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think for me, the pain had to start outweighing the fear of the unknown before I made a change. Because that uncertainty is so scary. And now when I'm faced with such moments, big or small, I try to see it more as possibility than fear of the unknown, because it can also be a very exciting place to be too.
Yeah. And I think the fear of the unknown, like for me now, I see it as the beauty and the dance of actually it's a space that we get to create from.
Yes.
And grow and expand into. Might be a bit shitty at the time and you might feel like you're being pushed or pulled by your hair, but I think that's what we have to start to embrace, because there's so much right now happening in our collective consciousness that we're being asked to let go of in order to step more into our authentic self. And I think that's the fight that we're having right now with our shadow self, because we're resisting the change or we're fighting with what we know, but we're too much in fear. Would you agree?
Definitely. That was very well articulated.
Yeah.
Yes.
So tell me, those that are listening, because, you know, we are moving out of the Piscean era very much into the era of the age of Aquarius, which is about authenticity, individuality, shining our light out in a light. That is what we're currently in now, and we're moving more into it next year, and we're in it for 44 years. So I'm like, hallelujah, bloody hallelujah. Yeah, I'm like, whoop, whoop, hallelujah. Those that are struggling with even knowing who their authentic self is, what steps would you tell them to start to feel into?
So struggling because they don't know who their authentic self is, or feel like something's off, or
I feel like something's off. Like, what was it for you?
Gosh, for me, it was kind of a quiet discontent deep down, it started that way until I just spun my life out of control and chose a variety of maladaptive coping mechanisms to quiet those voices and not face my soul and realize how far I had gone away from my truth. But if somebody's asking that question to themselves, feeling like there's something off, feeling like they aren't living authentically, first of all, I would say congratulations, because you're in a spot where you even have the self-awareness to know that. And that's huge. So I would recognize that. I would then start to observe, just on a very small scale and practical way, moments in your day that you feel aligned, moments that you don't, what it looks like during those times, who you're with, and just start at a very basic level without even changing anything right away. Just noticing and observing is what I think is the first step.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. We're really being led to soul now. And it's just getting louder, and it's getting louder.
Yes.
It's getting louder, and it's getting more fucking uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I say to people, we're being offered a choice right now to have a breakthrough or a breakdown. Do you want to walk in the old paradigm that has always given away your power to fit in and not really learn your soul's truth? Or are you wanting to walk more in your light? And I think that's the thing for me. People tend to dip into their authentic self and then they go, holy shit, it's too scary. Or spirituality, it's too scary, because I've got to acknowledge that I might have made a bad choice about my husband, or I might have, I've got to look at my addiction, or I've got to look at, and so people, it's easier. We live in a world that makes it easier to live in our shadow self, to not actually find who we came here to be, and when I say shadow self, I want to say it's through our programming, it's through the distractions that we have in society, it's through how we give our power away. It's easier to live in the illusion than actually embrace our truth, because our truth sometimes means we've got to make some big, hard fucking decisions. And I know that has been my truth when I've had to do dark night of the soul, excavation, earthworks. Would you agree?
Definitely. I think we're afraid to shine the flashlight too close onto some things, because what will we find? What our whole world might have to change. Our mental model of life and ourselves might have to change. And, to the mission of your podcast with distractions and getting out of the noise, those distractions can be traps that can keep us in that illusion, because those are the things that are supposed to be making us happy. And once we have those things, then everything else will solve itself magically, is what we're kind of relying on. So there's a lot of very systematic ways that we are forced to stay in that confusion.
Absolutely. And I think that confusion is the confusion outside of ourselves, the programming that we're constantly getting. That then it's like, if I think this or want to do this, there's something wrong with me. And I think that's the first thing. For me, that's that first light bulb moment. Like, there's nothing wrong with you to feel something different or to want something different than what other people want.
Right. It's your superpower. But we've been led to believe to just sit down, fit in, smile, don't ruffle any feathers, just keep the peace. And I think, though, the more that people do become vulnerable, and like you said, this movement that's kind of happening now, it gives others permission to do the same. And that is so freeing and beautiful. Like what you're raising awareness around is, I'm sure, just helping so many people, just hearing your voice and your experience.
I think, and having podcasts like this where there's actually a space for people to speak. I think we're in such a there's so much noise about shutting people's voices down. And I think that's the thing. It's like, how do we rise and have these conversations that are led, heart-centered, to activate people? Because, I know that for myself at times on my spiritual journey, there was all this programming of, and I had this conversation with someone this morning, there's all this program around feeling wrong, you being wrong in your feelings. But where do you go to actually, podcasts didn't exist when I was having my spiritual awakening. So where do you go to actually seek validation or know that you're actually, what you're experiencing is normal? It's so much noise.
Yeah. And clinging to those places and those people that give you that space has been very, very important for me, and finding those communities where I can do so. Because the less I'm around those people and the more I'm around certain situations that are more like mainstream and conformist, I start to feel really weird again. So I have to reconnect with my tribe and my people and people like you, and do these experiences on a regular basis to keep me in that flow.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's the thing. There's so many things that we, like what you just said, consciously shut down our energy fields. We shut down ourselves, that the more that we become attuned with our authentic self and allowing that voice to come through, you become so much more aware. So how do you, on a daily basis, connect to your authentic self? Is it like a practice that you do, or is it just you're so attuned now? You're so like attuned that it's just like, nah, not doing that.
Yeah, Lily, I don't do anything. I just wake up completely attuned. No, I'm kidding. No, I have to consistently practice. And that's what because these narratives that got me here in the first place to the point of breakdown, breakthrough, it took years for them to develop and strengthen. So almost like we're unprogramming and deprogramming and unlearning those things. I have to remind myself every day of this new school of thought, and it becomes more intuitive and becomes more natural. But journaling is the most potent way for me to connect with myself, hands down. And then I've acquired different things along the way: meditation, breath work, again, community. I hold a monthly goddess gathering at the wellness studio that I operate, and it is so nice. It's just a very intimate women's circle. And I think my job here, which is what, back to your question, does keep me attuned, is helping other people see their souls and love their souls. And so being in that space, I kind of say sometimes that I screwed myself over by my whole message being living your truth, because now I got to live my truth for the rest of my life. So, which is fortunate, and I'm glad that I'm grateful to have found my mission, and it keeps fine tuning every day. And I just am open to what's my next step. Where am I supposed to be?
I love that, because I think that's the thing. We all have a soul mission, and most people, actually all of people's soul's mission actually really isn't in the system.
Yeah.
If we really get to our truth, we want to be in the system, or we want to be part of that, element. But I go, when you give yourself permission to rewrite the rule book and to color in the gray, that is when the world explodes. Like, that is when shit becomes magical.
Yeah. The way I put it in my book is rewriting the script. Like, we are all handed a script that wasn't really ours, and we're playing in a play that we didn't direct. So becoming your own main character of your story, is what I think we're all here to do and to discover in our own way.
Yeah. So for those that are questioning, what was the activation? What was the first thing where you just went, fuck, this isn't right? Because obviously you've said there's been series of things that have been like the triggers to make you move. What was the real first niggle where you
light bulb?
Light bulb where you just went, oh fuck, I gotta move.
Yeah, that first one was when I was around 27, 28, and was just in the height of my addiction with drugs and alcohol. And I had this moment of clarity after a bad night and drive drunk. And I had a lot of rock bottom moments to that point, external and internal, that could have been my breakthrough moment. But I guess I just had more research to do, to prove to myself that I didn't have a problem. But I just had this moment of clarity after one night, and looked in the mirror and just didn't recognize myself anymore, and kind of asked, who are you? Like, what's the plan here? What are you doing with your life? And then since then, have just been on this journey. I feel like it wasn't even my choice. And that's what I try to explain to people. I didn't wake up one day and say, I think I want to start investigating wellness and become a healthier, better person. I kind of had to be brought to a really low point to make a change. And there was a little bit more of me that felt I wanted to live than die. And that's what motivated me. It was like this tiny much hope, hardly anything, but there was enough to get me open-minded and willing to try something new and try another way of life.
Yeah, I get that. I used to be in this lifetime, but it feels like a previous lifetime now, trauma care. And I used to work at an alcohol and drug rehab.
Interesting.
And so I totally, and I mean, my first husband was an alcoholic. You know, initially, I can totally hear what you're saying. You know, in my first marriage, I used to drink to keep up with him. And then I remember one day just waking up going, who the fuck is this woman? Like, who the fuck is this woman? You're really making unsafe choices. Like, you're really not living aligned and making unsafe choices. And then I could never work out after I left him why the job I was in was Odyssey House supporting people with addictions. It's because I needed to see the other side of the coin and have compassion. So I believe you don't wake up. You do not wake up one day and go, I'm going to become an alcoholic or I'm going to become a drug addicted. I'm just going to, snort that cocaine or smoke that. There's reasons to why you follow those pathways, and sometimes it's not full awareness, but, by the time you get to the end of the breaking, you're like, who the fuck am I? Like, who the fuck is this person? Thank you for sharing that, because I know there were so many people listening to that totally recognizing with that. Where for me, I remember in that marriage, and that was a pivotal point of some part of my spiritual awakening when I was about 27, 28. I remember in that marriage, there was so much going on. In the outside world, everyone would have thought that I had some fairy tales. Money wasn't an issue. Life was amazing. Lived in the most flashiest house. Like, could go away for weekends to Australia. And in other people's eyes, they would have thought I lived in a fairy tale. And for me, I remember one day looking in the mirror, putting my red lipstick on, going, I'm painting on a smile. Like, what's the fuck? I'm actually painting on a smile, looking at someone, going, who the fuck are you? You are so not aligned. This marriage isn't aligned. It's just so not aligned. I can say this openly. For so long, a part of me stayed hoping he'd change. And a part of me stayed because I grew up where my parents didn't have a lot of money. And so all of a sudden, growing up knowing that I would never have an issue with money. And there was always money in the bag. And so a part of me, that was the reason why I stayed, was because I knew I had security in this marriage. Even so, it was costing me my worth, my self-esteem, my happiness, my soul. I think that there's so many different activations if we choose to take them.
Yeah. And I kind of had one of those activations because I've been on both sides of the relationship. I've been the addict and then I've been the caregiver in a way. And that was a very eye-opening experience. And like you said, I think that helped me a lot with compassion and forgiveness. And I learned a lot about codependency in that one.
Hello. Yeah, I'm hearing you.
But it was another growth experience, I guess. It's a tough one. The addiction is certainly a sickness and it can be a nasty one for sure.
I look at it that all of these experiences that we have, no matter how shitty they are given to us as a part of a bigger concept to make us grow into the person and into the work that we're here to birth. Where for me, I know that even so I haven't had some of the experiences that my clients come with, I know energetically what it feels like. I've been on the other side of it. I've felt it. I've seen it in a counseling concession, and it gives us the wisdom to be able to do our work more authentically.
Definitely. And that's a big reason I do this work, is because all of the things that happened in my life, what's the point if I'm not using that wisdom, that spiritual depth that I've gained in order to help others? And that's why I wrote a book. I'm like this. And when I'm going through those hard moments, that's what I tell myself. You can't give up. This is happening for a reason. Don't give up, because my stories would be useless if not shared to help. And so, to your point, everything that you've been through allows you to hold space in a different empathetic way than if you lived a perfect life. Not that there's perfect, but pretty run of the mill, smooth course.
It gives us depth and character too.
Definitely.
Like, it makes us connect more to our soul and all the things that we're programmed out of, empathy,
sensitivity.
With your book, Gorgeous Girl, what called you to write it? What was the sacred calling?
Great question. I've been writing my whole life, and I think I always knew there was a book somewhere. I got very lost in my 20s, which I call the lost years, and that was in the throes of addiction and mess. And these are a hard time, I think, and I just didn't have the tools. And I went through something a few years ago. I had left the federal government, moved to an island, did my Eat, Pray, Love soul searching thing, came back, went back to school for social work, and something happened, a traumatic incident while I was there at the hospital interning. And it halted my whole life. Everything came to a stop. I didn't go back to school. I thought I had finally found my way. And then I was wrong, apparently. Something redirected me. It's when I was going through the end of the relationship with the addict. I was just at an all-time low, and all of these pillars that I thought I had built up around my identity had fallen. And so it was like, what's left? And the only thing I could do was write. And I think that's what I was meant to do. Like, there's no excuses now. You have enough material, you have enough wisdom. You're not doing anything else. So I started just taking a bunch of writing classes, and I went to Scotland for a writing conference about how to write a book proposal. And I just committed to it and somehow landed there. But I wouldn't have unless I had gone through all those things. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Totally. I've written books, and I always say there's a book in every one. It's whether you choose. It's whether you choose.
So what was your sacred moment to writing, like your first book, for example? Sacred calling, I think you said it so eloquently.
Yeah. So my first book was called Surviving Him.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
I, during my marriage, genuinely journaled and wrote, and genuinely thought I was losing my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
I genuinely thought I was having a spiritual awakening, not really understanding what the fuck was going on, where voices are talking to me. A husband saying he wasn't having an affair, but what I was feeling spiritually and being told was something different. Thinking I was having this, like, what the fuck is really happening? I was suicidal. I thought I was having a breakdown. I had, where do you go to learn about spirituality? I could see spirit, and I've been grown up all my life seeing spirit, but where do you go to learn about that? Like, where do you go to learn about that? I remember, I don't think I've actually ever publicly shared this. I remember going to the doctors because I was just seriously in a really bad space. I was having probably very much like you, that pivotal point where on the bathroom floor contemplating death. And going to the doctor because I knew I was not well. I had no family support, lived in a small community of 30 people. Going to the doctor, got some tablets, driving home back to Meraki, and with the tablets, heard my nana speak to me, who's in spirit, looked at the side of my car. She's sitting in the seat and she said to me, you need to pull over. I remember crying my eyes out, just bawling. And she goes, you don't need to take those tablets. You need to leave your husband. Throwing them out the door. And that was the moment that I committed to leaving my husband. I didn't leave him straight away. I then started communicating daily with my nana and writing. And that became a book.
Amazing. That is so beautiful.
But in that moment, like you, you know, it very much for me was this massive unraveling. You know, this massive unraveling of life.
Yeah.
Never writing to think it was ever going to be a book. It was very much about me having a space where I could actually speak. That then I just went, I think it, and then after I left and 6 months or 8 months later, I was like, I actually think that there's more women out there going through, all people out there.
Just a few.
Having the same fucking shitty experience. Like, that was literally how I felt. Like you, different story, different experience, but same.
The insanity of it is just, it'll take you down. Like you said, just questioning everything and so confused.
And I think, you know, that was the thing for me. Like I just said, like we spoke about earlier on, you know, in my life, if I'd stayed in that marriage, I would have had a soulless marriage. I would have been soulless, but I would have had security, the bells and whistles that society wanted you to have, a house, a beautiful, like money, you know, everything that I didn't grow up with to some degrees. So it was like, you've manifested this beautiful house, security, money, finances, abundance, everything. My soul was dying. When you've grown up not with security, why would she leave a marriage? Like, what's wrong? Because he was this amazing person out in the world, but a fucking prick inside our home, you know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know. It's a very common archetype, I think, unfortunately, with the masculine, and they can be very charming and so that's what was frustrating for me sometimes. I know I'm getting off topic, but it was like, you know how to be nice. You just choose not to be nice to me. You know?
We totally go out of topic here, so don't stress.
Yeah.
I think it was the first time I learned the word narcissistic. You really understood narcissistic, and he was a Jacqueline Hyde. Beautiful and this most charismatic person to everyone else. But to me, you know, I'd only get a window. And for however, but then, and that was my thing. It was like, this is a fucking roller coaster of my emotions and my mental health and well-being.
It's a vicious cycle.
And I think like you, and, you know, also like me, that was probably my first pivotal point of starting to unravel to find my authentic self. I think I'm still unraveling it to some degrees, but I think I'm a lot fucking closer than what I was, you know, in my 20s.
Yeah. And I think I've had numerous moments like that in my life in different intensities. And I don't know why you keep saying unraveling and it's bringing this metaphor, and I don't know how this will land, but I'm thinking of like a girl who has a perfect braid in her hair, but little pieces start coming out. So she's trying to tuck pieces in and use hairspray, but like they keep coming out, and then she finally just has to let the whole braid go and start over, even though her hair is going to look messy. It's like we try to patch everything up and put band-aids over bullet holes when we just need to start over, essentially.
And I feel, and I'd be curious to know if this is how it felt for you, when we accept our authentic self, it's like we step on another timeline or we go into another rebirthing phase of our lives. I think that's how it felt like to me. Is that what it felt like to you?
Yeah, I don't know if I would explain it in those terms, but I understand. I think I understand what you're saying. You mean like a different trajectory or a different, like a parallel timeline? Or
a parallel timeline. It's like we're being asked to step out of the old and into the new.
Yes.
And into the new way of being. We're letting go of an old way of living and we're rebirthing into a new way of being, or a new version of ourselves. It's like we've stepped into when I think of myself and all the different things I've done in this lifetime, there's so many different lifetimes where it's like, oh, I've just stepped on I feel like I'm a new woman again. I feel like I'm whole,
Yes.
kind of. Yeah.
Definitely. I can relate to that. And I think our metrics for success and happiness and wholeness change. Well, what we're measuring even changes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the thing for me is we have the thing that feels like it's collapsing tenfold right now is this need. We've all been always about our physical world. Yes. Physically, I've got to show up. I've got to work my 60 hours a week, and I only feel like I've earned my money when I'm buggered, when I'm physically broken or everything. It feels like that energy is starting to collapse, and the energy of well-being, emotional well-being, soul alignment is really starting to scream at us.
I think so, because I think the physical isn't sustainable and doesn't have the longevity or substance that soul has. And people are starting to suffer from that.
Yeah. And we're really seeing that right now in our physical world,
yes.
with the way I don't know what it's like in America, but mental health in New Zealand's through the roof.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just people's energy, their grief, their anger, their everything that they've suppressed for years and years and years is just spilling out of people now.
Yes. And for some reason in this atmosphere, they feel safe enough to do that, which is something that I think is replacing the collective consciousness of how things were before.
Yeah, absolutely. It's refreshing.
Oh, it's real. Imagine if we all walked around with only the capability to be real and authentic. The walls are coming down. Things are changing. Commend anybody who's even curious or willing to be curious about spirituality. And that might not even be how they conceptualize it, but openness to a different realm, something outside of themselves and their human brain and ego.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how you just said, and going back to probably something you said 2 minutes ago, your eat, pray, love moment.
Yes.
And you write about that in the book. Was that hard for you to give yourself permission for, knowing coming out of Washington federal job? Was that a hard thing for you to receive or into?
It was, but at the same time, I had been brought so low that anything felt possible. I was in this state of openness because I didn't want to go back to the way things were. And that's why I say, had things not gotten to that point, I don't think I ever would have had the courage or bravery to do that, or even the idea entering my mind. Once I decided and allowed myself to be led by the universe, the fear, like I said, the pain and fear of going back to my old life outweighed the uncertainty and the unknown and the possibility of what could be. Mm-hmm. And so that's, I think, what powered me. And I really felt like I was being led. So I don't know if that answers your question, but there was fear. It's funny. I bought my plane ticket to move to St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands on my way back from visiting. And I did that because I knew once I got back here, I would think of a million reasons not to go once I was pulled back in to this rhythm and system. And so I was like, no, I'm thinking the clearest I've ever thought right now in this airport on this layover. I need to do this now before I touch down. And and I am not proposing that everyone needs to move to an island to change their lives. That's just how it manifested for me. Yeah.
And so when you came back to Washington, because I think this is important, did other people around you, your friends, your family, work colleagues, try and influence you to stay? Like, how was it? What was there pressure? Like, because there's always outer noise trying to fuck us up on the way through.
Oh, I think I can count on one hand the people that were supportive of it. Maybe one or two people who said, just go for it, do it, and everybody else thought I was crazy, which was so ironic to me because I was thinking I'm as clear as I've ever been, but understanding where they're coming from, it was threatening their mental model of life because it's like, whoa, 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 you can't break the rules. We're not allowed to do this. I don't care that you're unhappy at work. I'm unhappy at work too. Just that's what we do. That's what life is. So I had to get over that. I just had to get over that and start making my own choices. And it was really empowering, truly, to make such a move like that, even though, and I talk about this a little bit in the book, but my family was very much against it. Very well-intentioned. They just hear that their daughter is going to this mysterious place they've never been. How is she going to live? How is she going to? So I understood their pushback and wasn't resentful about it. But I got to the point where I said, because they asked all the how questions. How will you do this? How will you make money? And I said, I'm not worried about the how right now. I'm worried about the why. And that's way more important to me. And if you want to support me during this move, like, awesome. You know a lot more about logistics, Dad. So help. But if you're going to be trying to talk me out of it, then I don't need that. And everyone in their own way got on board with it. Yeah. But they were shocked because I did everything according to the system. I'm the last person that, my high school class probably would have guessed would do something like this.
I think that's so important what you just shared. That's why I asked that question, because the thing is, sometimes when we feel like we're in flow and we're making those radical decisions that are so led by intuition, the universe, serendipity, whatever it is, so it's so easy to be sideswiped by the people you love or by the people of influence that are in your lives. I mean, I know that me and my husband, when we decided to leave Rangiora to move to Picton, everyone thought we were fucking batshit crazy. But for us, our why was so much, exactly what you said, our why was so much bigger than how it would look. It was, for us, it was like, more time, commitment, being present as parents. Like it just, the list of why outweighed how the hell would get money. How are you going to actually find jobs? Like it just completely just didn't make any fucking sense to us, because we were like, you know what? We're meant to be there, Spirit will take care of the rest.
Exactly. And if we do the footwork and listen to our intuition, I do think that the how part of the decision really works itself out.
Yeah. With your book, Gorgeous, what is the most powerful message that you want people to receive?
So my kind of tagline is trust your truth. And so that's kind of my one-liner if I were to put it into 3 words, which is very difficult. But yeah, I mean, any decision you make, trusting your truth, and to get to know your truth is a whole different process. And that comes with the raising awareness and all of that. But I would say just become curious about it and willing to explore something differently. Unless everything in your life is working out for you the way that you want it to, then there's no need to explore. But if you feel like something off could feel completely different for me than you. It might just be, I know that I'm meant for more. Something's not right in my life. I don't know what. Just explore it and look at it like an experiment and try different things and see what works.
Love that, because life is an experiment.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah, it's an experiment, and that's how I look at it. We're consistently being asked to grow, and some of us take that on board, and some people get stuck. But I get that we are consistently part of our experiences come in to help us become who we came here to be.
Yeah, and it can happen in very subtle shifts. Like I said, my spiritual awakening it grew. It wasn't I think a lot of us are waiting for that lightning bolt moment, but it isn't that. Maybe for some people it is, but that was not my experience. So just doing things a little bit different every day then leads to big things.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask 3 questions that I ask everybody. What would you tell your 5-year-old self now?
Just be yourself and do the things that you like to do, no matter what everyone else is telling you. Do the art, read the books, write the things, even though that's not what a career might look like in your household and among your peers.
Love that. What's your soul's mission? I know we've touched on it a little bit, but what's your soul's mission?
Again, to help people see their own souls and love their own souls enough that they then feel some aspect of their mission and have a ripple effect on their corner of the world.
Love that.
It's a tall order.
Yeah, but I love it though, because it's so enriched and it's doable. Last question. If you could change one thing in the world for the collective consciousness for humanity to help them rise, what would it be?
Only being able to tell the truth.
Holy shit. Imagine that impact.
I think at first it would be really messy. If we're talking about now, applying it to now, because things have gotten but we're the disruptors, right? And what does that do in the long run? You become the peacemakers. So first you wake people up and shake things up a bit, and then there's peace.
Yeah. And I know you're in Washington, DC. That's why Trump's in the House. He's the disruptor. That's why at a time when we are collectively in the crumbling, he's there to disrupt the energy to make people be called into soul. It's going to
that's such an interest.
I know a lot of people struggle with that, but more people will energetically be called out of the noise and into soul's knowing, which I think is a beautiful thing. Like I think if you can connect to your soul,
definitely,
it's part of what we're here for, and a bigger concept. How do people find you? How do people find your book? Let me know, sister.
So I have my book. It's called Spirit Vigilante. It's on Amazon. And then I'm also on Instagram at Spirit Vigilante. And then my website is thespiritvigilante.com. If you Google Spirit Vigilante, you'll find me. I'm the only one.
I'll put it in the show notes too. Why Spirit Vigilante? Can I ask, how'd that name come to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted something to capture the darkness and the shadows that you spoke of. And if you think about it, most superheroes are vigilantes. They're taking it upon themselves to do things a little bit differently. And so I see it, and I'm a wordsmith. And so I love how words break down and their meaning, and vigilant is part of the word vigilante. So I think staying awake and staying aware in order to protect and defend, whether that's our souls, the collective. Yeah. So that's where it came from.
Oh, I got goosebumps when you said that.
Oh,
I think it's rich, and it's just so potent. Absolute potency there, sister.
Thank you.
What would be the last message that you would like to share with the listeners? The last piece of your wisdom.
I already used trust your truth. It's not, spoiler alert, it's not all about you. So even when you're doing the soul work, you are thinking maybe, why am I doing all this work? This is selfish. It's all for the greater good. And when that's your North Star, the greater good, you will align with your highest self.
I totally believe that. I think we're not about a me anymore. We're about a collective we.
And that's what I had when I moved into this space of exposing myself, because I really had that crossroads of, I'm just going to be a ghostwriter. No one's actually going to ever know me. I'll write fiction to mask my real story. And then the opposite of, no, you have to show yourself. And what inspires me to do that is, it's not about me or my discomfort, or I don't want to write this, or I don't want to tell this story. It's like, take me out of it. That has nothing to do with it. I'm just the vessel to carry this message to other people. It's not about whether Lindsay's completely comfortable in all the choices she makes.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think when we see ourselves, you know, my biggest activation and the biggest journaling question you can ask yourself is, how am I to be of service? How am I to serve? That, when I started journaling, that, holy jibber Jesus, I did not like what I was being told.
Right.
But I went, you know, but now it's like, you know what? I'll just show up doing this little bit. And then once that's comfortable, I'll just show up to do this little bit and this other little bit and this other little bit. Never in a million years did I think I'd be on the journey I've been on. But it's about, how do we be in service? How do we be in service to others? I think that that's probably one of the most powerful questions we can ask soul.
Yeah. And if that sounds too big or intimidating or daunting to others, I would encourage journaling. What is my next step today? You know, what is my next step? And just listening for the answer. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you so much for your wisdom, your time. I know that so many people will get so much out of this. Because it's full of so much wisdom and, you know, you and I showing up in our vulnerable truth. And I think that's really what people, you know, when I think of authentic self, that's what people are craving right now, permission to feel what they're truly experiencing.
Thank you so much for having me and for your commitment to this work that you do on a regular basis that is giving people the space to discover their true nature.
Thank you, gorgeous.